afternoon, everyone. This is Michele Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. Today, I have one of my very close friends, and we've never met in person because she lives in New Zealand. But when you know how things happen when you meet somebody, even online, and you feel an immediate chemistry. Well, that's what happened with Lisa Tamati and Michele Hughes. So we are like sisters, right, Lisa?
Yeah, brilliant. You're absolutely amazing, Michelle, and I love your work and just love your ethos. So yes, we definitely are sisters from another country.
Country and another mother. I always say with my male friends, you're a brother from another mother.
Exactly. I love
Yeah,
it.
so I don't know, it's been what, 3 years since we've met each other, and you were the one, good for you, to approach me on LinkedIn, if I
Hmm.
remember correctly. And I remember saying to my assistant at the time, "Oh my God, call that woman. She
Call
looks."
that crazy lady.
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, just like everything that I read about you, I was like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. So why don't you start by giving us your backstory so everybody knows who you are, and maybe start with that little girl, Lisa, and tell us how you grew up to be who you are today.
Yeah, we won't go back too far, it'll be boring. But yeah, so I come from New Zealand, so I'm a Kiwi there for the funny accent. Sorry, guys. And yeah, I'm very old. I'm older, than I would like to admit. But grew up in the 70s in a very lovely family over here. But I had a very I was I have a background as an ultra marathon runner. Let's start there, otherwise we'll be here forever. So I spent 25 years racing the world's toughest endurance events around the world. So doing expeditions, doing ultra marathons, climbing mountains, trekking, traveling, doing all of that sort of adventure stuff. And I think I got into that. I was a gymnast as a child, and I got to puberty, grew up too big, too tall, too heavy, to everything. These gymnasts have got to be little, and I disappointed my dad very much that I wasn't going to make it in the gymnastics scene, and so he'd always wanted us to represent our country in something, and for me it was gymnastics, and so I failed. So I had to find something else to replace it to please dad. I think that was sort of my motivation to begin with.
Mhm.
Um, and then in my my late teens, early 20s, I had a boyfriend who was a very extreme, amazing athlete, and we spent years sort of traveling around the planet doing lots of stuff. Unfortunately, it was a very abusive relationship, these early ones when you're young and you put up with far too much that you shouldn't have. And so he actually left me in the middle of the Libyan Desert. We're doing a crossing, an illegal crossing of the Libyan Desert. And after a 5-year long relationship, he decided to ditch me in the middle of that. So that was a big turning point in my life. And that was an extreme expedition where we were like, 250 kilometers that we had to cross. We had no outside help. We had only, 2 liters of water a day, which was by no means, if you know anything about deserts and 40
Right.
odd degree temperatures, and 2 liters of water a day was not enough. And so we were covering, 45 kilometers a day, sort of with these huge backpacks, like in kilos, 35 kilos I had on my back, So this was a very extreme situation that I was in. And the boyfriend at the time decided to pack a wobbly and leave me on day 4.
I mean,
So
that is like that is almost an unreal piece of information that you just said. How could someone with any kind of character leave a poor girl, not even a woman hardly yet, right? A poor girl in the middle of a desert by herself. I mean, you
Well,
have
no, I wasn't, but we had 2 other guys with us, so I was with the other 2. So luckily,
right.
but it was a really extreme situation, and it was really the culmination. I haven't gone into the backstory, but it was a culmination of having complete control over my life, basically at that point, and this was the first time that we'd done any sort of expeditions or adventures with other people, and they were like, hang on a minute, this is not okay the way you're treating her. And they were like, this is not all right. So these 2 alpha males, if you like, had a big argument about, me. And it was the fact that the boyfriend wanted me to help with the book, with the photography that we were doing.
Mhm.
And we were traveling really fast. Like we had to move. 45 kilometers a day, which is a lot when
Right.
you're in a desert. And if we didn't, we weren't going to get out. And I physically just wasn't able to do that and go and set up tripods and take photos and,
Right.
do all of that.
Right.
And so the boyfriend at the time was, like, you're useless. You can't, what's wrong with you type of thing. And
Wow.
Elvis, who was the leader of the expedition's like, hang on a minute, you can't do that.
Well, I'm just curious at that time, how did that shape you going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny at the time. And it was one of these, it was a situation where we were so dehydrated, all of us. So your tempers are very short anyway, because if anyone's experienced real dehydration, it is the most torturous thing that you can possibly imagine. So to be fair to him, he wanted to get moving faster, and um, and the rest of us weren't able to, and I wasn't able to do the job that he wanted. So it was a really dire situation, and it was a real low point in my life. And I started to fall apart because this is the love of your life, and you're in the middle of a desert, and he's just left you, and you don't know if you're going to make it out, and you don't know whether your relationship's going to survive. And I was living in his country, Austria, at the time. So your whole life's falling apart, right? And in that moment, I really sort of had to pull myself together, and it was a learning to compartmentalize my emotional trauma that I was going through from the physical trauma that I was going through, and going, hang on, I got to survive here. So I've got to put the emotional baggage to the side, and I've got to really focus on survival and getting through and not causing any more trouble to the other two guys who were with us. And so we, the three of us carried on. He left us, and I didn't know whether he'd survive, because you're in the middle of a Libyan desert by yourself. That's not a good idea to be alone in anything like that. And it was touch and go. You'd have to read my first book, Running Hot, for the whole story. And I nearly didn't make it out because the dehydration got so bad, on day 5, that I was in deep trouble. My body starting to break down, nervous system breaking down, passing out all the time, just really in deep trouble. But we did make it out, and it took me about 2 years to recover from it physically, but mentally it took me a lot longer to recover from the relationship. And it was a turning point, because it was like, it was about as low as you could go in your life. Your life's falling apart, the country you're living in, the boyfriend, everything.
Right.
And then going, taking the time to recover, and then going, hang on, I was still living in Austria. I wanted to have more adventures, but I wanted to do it in a more controlled manner. And that's when I came across a race in Morocco called the Marathon des Sables, which is a very famous ultra marathon that runs across the Moroccan Sahara, 240 kilometers. And I'd never done a marathon at this point, but I'd done lots of trekking and lots of, adventuring. And I thought, I might have a go at this by myself for the first time, doing something for myself with other people down there, but not with somebody. And so I went and got sponsors, and I managed to get down to this event. And it was the most incredible, wonderful event of my life, because it was surrounded by the most amazing people on this big mission together. It was hard, but it was nowhere near as hard as the stuff I'd been through with the in the past. And
Mhm.
so it was, for me, it was like this revelation. I can keep having adventures. I can meet all these amazing, cool people. I can, do all these extreme things in a more controlled environment. And that's what I ended up doing, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And 25 years later, I had a really amazingly long career. I had no talent, Michelle, whatsoever for it, but I was just, I think those early experiences, being told that you're useless, being told that you can't do something, really sort of fired up a fire in me to prove certain people wrong, and so that was a driving force to, I'm going to show you guys, sort of thing, in the beginning at least, and then it morphed into other things. But it was very much I'll show you, and that's probably a bit why I have a very contrarian nature now to this day. When someone tells me I can't do something, I'm like you, Michelle. I'm just like, yeah, well, you watch me. I'll find a way.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Qigenics. From stem cell therapy to lifestyle coaching, Qigenics is the perfect place to go for all your health and wellness needs. This health clinic is amazing at getting you personalized medicine and wellness that is unique to you. Use the code AGELESS and you'll get 20% off your first service with them. Go to www.qigenix.com to find out more information about these powerful methods. I was listening to Tony Robbins last night on one of his podcasts, and he's so inspiring anyway. But that's one of the things he said. He said, never complain, only look at yourself and say, I'm only going to use this to get better. So if I have a setback, that's my lesson. What have I learned from this? Not complaining about being a victim, or this is why me, that kind of an attitude that some people adopt. But instead, what you did, which is to say, I'm using this as a launching pad. And this wasn't, it was a disappointment. It certainly was a disappointment. It was almost a death in your case, and yet you used it to launch into something, even to show you're even better than what you thought you were before that all happened. So it was like it was like a gift. I mean, they say that crisis and opportunity in Chinese are synonyms.
Wow.
I didn't know. I never knew that, but
No, I didn't know that.
hey,
That's a new one.
so if you have a crisis and you look at it and say, okay, what is this teaching me, or what is this meant to teach me? And then all you do is look around you like you did and find another opportunity to just show how much tenacity you have. So good for you. So did you ever hook up or see this guy again?
Yes, I did years later, and he had matured a little bit, and I'd moved on, and it was that was good to heal old wounds, and so to speak. But it still stayed with me though. Like, even though that I was no longer angry at him, so to speak, it was more, I had the opportunity to do a race in America, actually Death Valley, through the Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is a famous race in your neck of the woods. And this boyfriend back then had cycled through Death Valley in the middle of summer, and so it was in the back of my mind. When I heard about this race, as he'd always skited about cycling through Death Valley in the middle of summer, and I'm like, wouldn't that be nice if I could run through Death Valley in the middle of summer, and sort of that would be a good bookend to that chapter, And so I started training for the Badwater Ultra Marathon and managed to get a slot, because it's not easy to get into that race. It's very difficult. You have to have, it's sort of like the world champs of our sport, if you like. And I finally got a slot in the race, and had the most incredible adventure running through Death Valley in the middle of summer. It was like 135 miles, and temperatures up to 125 or something degrees, and it was absolutely brutal. And I did that twice, actually. I did that in 2 years in a row, and that was sort of a bookend to, like, okay, I think I've proven it now. I'm not that hopeless. I'm not that useless. I can do things. And when you cross the finish line on something like that, Michele, and there's no stadiums full of people and people putting medals around your neck or anything like that. It's more the fact that you took on a massive challenge that was really difficult. You had a wonderful team around you, because I had a brilliant team that I put together, my crew, that really helped me do it, and wonderful sponsors, and the family back home, and all of those sorts of things. And then you actually finish it, and you actually cross the finish line, and you realize, wow, I can do more. All of us can do more than we ever thought possible. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice for that goal? And that's the question that you have to ask yourself. It's not the question of, can you do something? It's more like, do you understand what you're going to go through to achieve this goal? Is this sacrifice worth it to you to achieve this goal? And if so, then you go hard, and you push, and you find ways. And when you're really determined to make something happen, you attract people to you, because people, like, I had no way of getting there. I was 38 at the time. This was, many years later. I was back home in New Zealand. I had nothing. I'd sort of gone through another divorce, and I'd, come home from living in Austria. So I was sort of starting back at scratch at 38 years old with nothing. And I wanted to do this race. And so I, just started talking to every man and his dog about this incredible race that I wanted to do. And when you're really enthusiastic about something
Mhm.
and you have a mission on, what you find is that people want to come on board for some reason. If you're a really enthusiastic person, they'll be like, okay, oh, I'll get involved with that. And so I, managed to get in one sponsor and another sponsor and another sponsor and crew members and team members. And together we all put this whole project together and we managed to get over to the States because, it cost a lot of money and all of that sort of thing. And then to actually achieve it. And then when you have a team like that behind you where you can't let them down, can you? You've got to push to the absolute limit to make sure you actually get there. And all of those things are really learning lessons. So ultramarathoning for me was not about the running itself, but that was the conduit to me learning how to push, how to grind, how to set up projects, how to market myself, how to be a speaker, how to do things like interviews like this, all of those things that go into putting projects like that together. And when you do all of that, you just realize, oh my gosh, I can achieve, that we all set limitations on ourselves, and I still do it today in certain areas. Like I think I've got a problem with technology, so I'm not good at that stuff. And the more I hear myself saying that, the more I'm going, I've got to focus on that stuff, like, because we all have the stuff that we think, I can't do that. And this is what really set me up well for a life situation that happened to me then later on, where 10 years ago, and I think I shared this on my first podcast with you, but it's a while back now. My mum had a massive aneurysm, so almost 10 years ago now,
Mhm.
and she was left in the hospital. We had a misdiagnosis for a start, so we had a medical misadventure. The ambulance driver, she'd collapsed at home. Ambulance thought she was having a stroke or an aneurysm and told the doctors that. And the doctor at the emergency said, oh, no, she's just got a migraine. And so he left her there,
Oh,
basically dying from an aneurysm, and said, oh, you've just got a migraine and we'll give you some, Panadol or some painkillers, and left her there. And at that point in my life, I wasn't in the medical world. I am now. And I was not knowing what to ask for, what to do. I was believing that the doctors knew everything. I just left it up to them. And then after a few hours, my mum was in incredible pain, and she was like, like when you have an aneurysm, which is a bleed in the brain in this case, the pain is something like you cannot imagine. Apparently, it's one of the worst pains in the world because your brain is being squashed to death, basically. And so I rang up a paramedic who'd been on my crew, and I said, hey, the people up here, I'm not getting anywhere. Can you please come and help? Because I think there's something major wrong and they're ignoring me. She came up and she took one look at mum and went, oh, yep, she's having an aneurysm or a stroke. And so she went to the doctor and she told this doctor off. And said, get her a CT scan right away, right now, and in no uncertain terms, so to speak. And he finally relented after 6 hours of us being in the ED, and got a CT scan, and then it came back, oh my God, blood right throughout the brain. She's probably dying. And we live in a regional area where there's no sort of neurological unit, so they had to get air ambulances in, which took another 12 hours for them to shift her, and she could die at any moment, right?
oh,
The gold standard when you have an aneurysm is to get them into surgery within an hour if you want to save their lives. And here we were 18 hours before she got surgery. So the blood and the damage was extensive. And this put me on high alert, Michelle, about I've got to do whatever I can in this new situation that I've been presented to research the hell and not be caught short again. And if we have another chance, and I remember, promising God and the universe that if I had another chance to do it right this time, I would study and I would help and I would do whatever it takes to help my mum. And I remember saying that to my dad. My dad, the doctors are going, we don't think she's going to survive. Get ready for the worst. And my dad was, like, oh my God, he'd been married to her for 55 years, and she was his life. He started to, break down, and I'm like, she's alive, Dad. I grabbed him and I just said, look, she's alive. I'm not going to be caught short again, Dad. We're going to do, I gave him a whole lot of jobs to do, get down to Wellington, do all this. When people are in an emergency situation like that, give them jobs so that their brain, their executive function can take over, and you can focus on what you can control in this uncontrollable situation. And so over the next 3 weeks, to cut a long story short, she was in and out of coma. She was very close to death multiple times. The surgeons did a wonderful job on their part. But she was in and out of coma, and as the blood and the brain matter mix, you get more and more inflammation happening over the following weeks. So you're not out of the woods straight away. It actually gets worse and worse and more brain damage before you hopefully survive and stabilize. So in this time, I'm just studying my heart out, and I'm catching things that the doctors aren't catching already, in the hospital, and just being hyper vigilant, realizing that, they'd already mucked up once and wasn't going to let that happen on my watch again. And not being able to control that much because she was in the ICU, right? So I didn't have much control. But after 3 weeks, she stabilized. They said, look, she's going to survive. We've got her through the worst of it, but she's massively brain damaged at age 74. She's never going to do anything again. Like, she was like a baby, had hardly any higher function at all, didn't know who she was or recognize us or, any control of her body. She was paralyzed completely on the right side, no speech, nothing. And in this situation, I was like, right, I'm going to start studying brain rehabilitation. And I came across something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I actually run a hyperbaric oxygen clinic now. And I read Dr. Paul Hart, who's an American doctor, very famous doctor, and he spoke in his book about how powerful this is for brain rehabilitation. And then I read a book called by Dr. Norman Doidge about the brain that changes itself and can heal itself. And I'm like reading all these books, and I'm hearing from the doctors it's impossible, you can't do it, there's nothing to be done, there's nothing to be done, and I'm like, hang on, these doctors are telling me over here there is something to be done and I can do something. So I decided to believe the people that told me I could and not the people who told me I couldn't. And she was in hospital for 3 months, and in that time, I already picked up. I'd done a lot of racing at altitude in the Himalayas, and I had had altitude sickness before, and I was recognizing the altitude sickness in my mum. In other words, a lack of oxygen. And so I said to the doctors, I think she's got sleep apnea, or I think she's not breathing. They'd taken an oxygen mask off her, and I think she needs to have a sleep apnea assessment, and they wouldn't listen to me. And so I got an outside consultant who happened to be, my dad worked for him as his gardener. And so I said, hey, can you come in to the hospital? So we smuggled this consultant, a sleep assessment guy, physiologist, into the hospital one night, and we hooked Mum up to the sleep apnea machines, and we did a sleep apnea assessment, and it came back to she was severe sleep apnea. So she was stopping breathing hundreds of times a night, hundreds of times. So that was meaning that the little bit of brain power that she had left was being knocked by the fact that she wasn't getting oxygen, right? So this was actually chain stoke breathing, which is what you do usually on the way out, like that's, getting pretty bad. And so when I found this and I went to them and said, hey, well, you told me I couldn't do a sleep apnea assessment. I did it anyway, got in trouble for that, but who cares? This is the results. And then they were like, okay, we'll put the sleep apnea machine on her. And then she started to get oxygen when she was asleep. And she was sleeping 18, 20 hours a day, right? Because she was so fatigued and so badly damaged. And so this was my first win. And then she started to have little bits of improvement. And then once I got her out of the hospital setting, because then after 3 months, they were like, we have to put her into an institution. You're never going to be able to care for her at home. She's 2 people round the clock care. You're just not going to cope as a family. And I remember fighting with a social worker who was a complete asshole, excuse my language, but he was. He was hell-bent on getting him out of his budget and into another institution's budget. And that meant not letting her go home to our house, because then they still had to look after her. They were still, have to have caregivers come in and things like that, which cost the money. So it was a budgeting thing. So that you have to understand, when you're in the hospital system, there are budget constraints, there are things like that they're prioritizing over the health of your loved one. So if you want to get the best for your loved one, you're going to have to fight and advocate for them in order to get those resources. At least that's the case in New Zealand. So anyway, I fought to get her home. I eventually got the right to take her home. I used to take my big brother with me, who was a very scary looking man, and he would just come and sit in all the meetings. So he didn't have to do anything, but I got what I wanted, Michelle, to bring her home, right? And then,
that
so
is
yeah.
an amazing story. So okay, so the hyperbaric oxygen, they didn't have a unit at that hospital, of course.
Of course not.
Yeah. But you knew that hyperbaric oxygen was going to be one of the protocols that you had to
Yep.
provide. So how did you get from A to B with getting a unit and getting
Yeah.
mom at home to be on a hyperbaric oxygen unit?
Yeah, so I actually approached a commercial dive company of all places because they need this for divers who get the bends. That's the same hyperbaric chamber that they use for such accidents. And so it's by law, commercial dive companies have to have these. And I approached these wonderful people and I said, hey, this is my situation, this is my research. Can I please use your chamber? And these amazing people said, yeah, you sign a legal waiver and do all the legalities that they're not responsible. And you can use the chamber. So I'm like, hell yes, you know. So the day I got her out of the hospital, she's in a wheelchair. She can't move anything. She has no idea where she is. She's going straight. We didn't even go home. We went straight to this factory and we went straight into the hyperbaric chamber, which, by the way, was not easy. We had to get a forklift. We had to put her stretcher onto the forklift to get her into this chamber because she couldn't move, right? And my dad and I went in there with her and we did all the treatments with her. And this was amazing. Like, and what these people allowed us to do was incredible. And we had 33 treatments there. And my mum started to respond. Now, she didn't just get up and be fixed, right? Like, this was massive brain damage. But she started to have a few words. She started to move her right arm, which had been paralyzed. She was starting to have a flicker of intelligence behind her eyes. And then I realized this is working. We need a lot more of this. And then I lost access to the chamber because the guys had to take it off on a contract. And so I then went, you know, another obstacle, what do I do? So I mortgaged my house and I bought a hyperbaric chamber and I installed it in our house. And then I had to work it out. How do I get her in? Because this was a different type of chamber, a soft shell chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a paralyzed person into a chamber is not a simple thing. But I found a way and a method. My family and I worked it out and we got her in there and we put her through treatment after treatment after treatment. And in this time, I'm also studying everything I possibly can about how the brain rewires itself, how to heal the neurons, what supplements to take, what diet to do, what, you know, functional neurology, how to reestablish a vestibular system, you know, eye exercises, all these things that I could possibly do to stay one step ahead of her in her recovery. And I had no idea. I was just flying completely blind. There was no support from the hospital. There was no physio even. There was nothing. I engaged one good physio for a little bit of a time and he gave me some exercises to try with her. And I just stayed one step ahead of her in her recovery journey. I learned the next step and tried to work out everything. And then this time I, you know, studied genetics. I got qualified in genetics. And so, you know, I did all these things. And the long story short, it took me 2.5 years to get her back to full capacity, like full driver's license, full ability to walk, you know, 3-4 days a day, go to the gym 5 days a week, socializing with friends,
Wow.
full power back.
That, that, that
Amazing.
2.5 years is really a short period of time for somebody that was in that extreme, really one step from death.
Yeah, and she was 70, you know, right by then she was 76, you know, like she wasn't a spring chicken anymore. And so for the brain to heal itself at that age, you know, takes a hell of a lot of. So I had basically an 8-hour program a day of exercises, of movement, of whether it was me moving her or a massage or, you know, just every day there was just activities all day to try to and rest in between because she was very fatigued as well. But, you know, a really strict program day in, day out, day in, day out. And I know how to grind because I'm an ultra marathon runner. And so I know how to just keep going when I see no progress and nothing's improving. And I just keep going anyway, because the alternative is I didn't have one. So all I knew to do was the things that I could do, right? So I just kept studying and kept doing the doing. And there would be months of no progress whatsoever. But I just push through, push through, push through. And what I found with biology, and I've seen this over and over again now because I work with people in this area, is that the biology changes and you have a step up of improvement and then you'll plateau. And you'll
Yeah.
plateau for 2 or 3 months and then you have another step up and
Right.
plateau again. But most people give up in that plateau, right?
Right.
And same even with hyperbaric. You need enough treatments if you're this bad. Obviously, you don't need quite as many with normal sort of things, but you need a lot of treatments. And therefore, most people will do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and then they'll go, it's not working. and they're not prepared to put in the hard yards and the hard work and the time and the money and the energy that it takes to actually push through those barriers and get to that full potential. And yeah, so I wrote a book about it called Relentless, and that's available on Amazon and on my website and things. And it's a really an inspiring story. Unfortunately, it doesn't finish there, because then 4 years later, so now when Mum was 80, or 79, 80, she ended up with brain cancer.
Oh,
Probably, after the after effects of the aneurysm, and also it was EBV, Epstein-Barr virus positive, CNS lymphoma. So this was a blood cancer, but in the brain. So she had tumors right throughout the right side of the brain. Sorry, the left side of the brain. And when this happened, her whole face dropped, and I thought she was having a stroke, and I had to fight for 3 weeks for them to get an MRI. Once again, you're just up against it in the medical system.
yeah.
So this is one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for people, really fighting for the resources that they need, and really taking as much control in the preventative space, so that they don't end up in these, well, hopefully don't end up in these situations. You can never know, because you never know what's going to come at you. But it's a real battle for resources out there. So anyway, I managed to get Mum an MRI, and came back, brain cancer. And then I chased a neurosurgeon that had operated on her previously all around the place until I got him on the phone, terrorized everybody until I got him. You know how hard it is to get to a neurosurgeon. I did. And he said, he rang me and said, I hear you have been chasing me around and you want to talk to me. I said, yeah, do you remember Isabel? He said, yes, I remember Isabel. I said, well, she's in trouble again. She needs your help. He said, get down here on Tuesday and we'll operate. So he did. He operated. Fantastic, amazing surgeon. Took out this massive tumor, which was the size of a grapefruit, in her brain.
Oh,
And and then they did the pathology on it, and of course it came back a very aggressive CNS lymphoma. Nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. She's going to die. That's just very quick, and it will be only a matter of weeks, and she won't survive. Now, I've written another book called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You. I've interviewed all the top people in the world of the metabolic approach to cancer. I went full bore. I put 15 doctors on her team. I went everything from peptides through to the ketogenic diets, to doing more hyperbaric, to intravenous vitamin C, to off-label drug combinations that block the food to cancer. It took us 12 weeks. I also did temozolomide, which was a type of chemotherapy that an advanced genetic test that I had done in Greece showed me she would respond to. So I had to chase all around the country to get that. And so I went both sides in this case, because we had weeks to live, and no other options. I would have preferred not to have had to have that, but I decided to do that anyway.
mhm.
And yeah, 12 weeks later, we were clear on the MRI of any tumors. And she's been in remission ever since. So you never want to say you're cured. We've got another MRI coming up later this month, and I'm, like this.
Mhm.
And I stay very much on my toes. I have a whole arsenal of supplements and things. And, she has a very strict diet. She has all sorts of incredible, peptides and things that she's on. And hopefully we're winning. Hopefully we're still winning at the end of this month. We'll know again where we're at. But, we've had another 4 years of good quality of life. I mean, she's had other dramas, gone and broken her hip and things like that in the middle, had sepsis. The amount of times, Michele, that I've been told that she's dying and this is the end and there is nothing you can do. And, sign this advanced care planning, which is their right to knock you off. Never sign those things.
Yeah.
And the amount of times that she's been told that, and you've just got to accept, Lisa, that she's going to die, and I'm like, well, no, F you, I'm not. And Mum's the same,
Mhm.
yes, one day we will die. I've lost my dad, I've lost a baby. I know what it is to go through grief. I know what it is to lose loved ones, but I'm a fighter. I'm a warrior. I'm not going to give up until the very last second. Like that's just who I am. And people don't like that. They're like, oh, you've got to just let go. Why? Why?
Well,
Life is
that's
precious.
because you've been dealing with the allopathic medical community rather than the functional. If I mean, you have a
Yeah.
lot of functional connections, obviously,
Now I do. Yeah. I have
but
lots of friends that are
the people
like,
that are telling you that are not the people that are in the functional world.
no.
They want to find solutions, and some of them are extreme enough to believe in immortality. So let's just say, it's all about who you're networking with. And
Exactly.
yeah,
And
so
I'd rather be with those guys than the standard allopathic. Unfortunately, you need them, right? Like you're in the
it's a
situation, you need the
crisis.
scans, the
Yeah,
operations.
exactly. In a
Yeah.
crisis, that is the modality, but you need to combine those to get. And you are just tenacious. That your tenacity should be an Olympic award.
Yeah, you have to fight like hell in the system. Like, and even then you don't win, let alone people who don't fight. Or, I just feel so sorry for people who don't have feisty, sons and daughters that can fight for them, or,
Exactly.
older people who are alone. I just see people dying
Right.
unnecessarily
Right.
early,
Right.
and it's to me it's like, oh, they're all told, oh, there's nothing we can do, it's just, and then they dehydrate them to death, and they don't, like, for me this is inhumane, and they give it a name, they give it a protocol name,
Yeah.
that, and that to me makes it okay that you don't provide food
Well,
and water to
they
people.
put a name. That means they can just forget about it. They put it in a box with a frame
It's
around it.
illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Yeah, that frame kind of is self-defining, and basically has its termination of the life as part of the ingredients that are within that frame. So they give up too soon, and they look for alternatives that are not productive to the outcome. So
Yeah.
it's more drugs, more invasive treatments, but not the things that will help to heal at the source. That's the problem with allopathic medicine, is they're trying to heal symptoms or cure symptoms, but they're not looking for the root cause, and
Yep.
that's what you.
Again.
So
Yep.
where in the process did you start pushing the limits, which is, by the way, is the perfect name for you, pushing the limits? Is there any describe you better than that? So where did the podcast begin? I know you've been doing it for longer, about double me. I'm 7 years, and you're what, about
Yeah, I'm about 11 years in now, I think. So basically, I'd started the podcast before Mum got sick, not long before, but it was very much a running and performance and athletic performance podcast at the very beginning. And then, of course, when Mum got sick, that flipped, because then it went into, getting the right doctors on that I needed to talk to help Mum, right? Selfishly. And then it morphed into other things. And, that's why I've ended up interviewing all these cancer doctors as well, and have a book now. And, like it's morphed over the years into different things as I've morphed, and as I've changed, and as I've, and recently, Michelle, I've been really focusing not only on the longevity and health optimization sector, which of course I love, but also in self-sovereignty and wealth, which you would know a lot about, probably, like to me, so studying what's happening in our financial system and how we can protect our wealth going forward, and because all of this longevity stuff unfortunately costs a lot of money, and we need to, if we're going to live longer, we're going to have to finance that living longer. And so for me, it's like a logical step to start now learning, and have been sort of for the last 5 years, like learning everything about the monetary system, and how do we protect ourselves from government overreach. And of course, what we experienced during COVID sort of broke my paradigm of how the governments can control your life completely if they decide to, We were one of the, people that didn't believe that the vaccines, were good, for example. And so we were, cut out of society over here in New Zealand. And that sort of woke me up to, hang on, we're not living in a democracy like I thought we were living in a democracy. We're not living in a safe place. And so that really sent me down the rabbit hole of studying monetary history and
Well,
the latest things that we have, Bitcoin and things like that. So
well, the thing is, Lisa, that I say this to everybody, it's very expensive for the average person to be able to support longevity.
oh, huge. Yeah.
The cost of treatments, if you're going to be like, I mean, not everybody is Brian Johnson, right? That can spend
No.
$2 million a year on his health. I mean, just going to for plasmapheresis or EBOT or any of those that are cutting edge. Yep, even the peptides. I mean, just injecting peptides,
Yep.
like what, $365 if you're lucky and you can find somebody that's got a really good quality. Uh,
Yeah.
so anyway, you add all that up, and like you said, your mother was on. You had your mom on numerous peptides. So
Huge. Yeah.
you know,
Huge cost. Huge cost.
so
I mean, we had to sell a house basically to finance her saving her life. But like at the end of the day, that, I mean, your loved ones are far more important than your assets, right?
yeah,
So whatever it takes, once again, is my motto. But now I'm sort of focusing on, well, how can I make more? Not, I don't want money for flash cars and flash houses and yachts and things. I want money so that I can get access to the right treatments that I need for my loved ones. I want to stay healthy and I want to be functional for as long as possible. I want the freedom that
hmm
that brings as well, the freedom over my time and the freedom over my resources. And I want to be able to impact the world, right? And so I can't do that from a place of poverty. And so I have to try to work out, not that I've cracked the code, everybody, like not,
right.
but how do I, do that and understand? So going a deep dive into this world as well as the longevity world, I think is very important. Because in the future, I think it's going to be important, Michelle, that we may have to leave our countries that we grew up in order to go to places that respect property rights and your medical freedom rights and things like that, which is not what I want to entertain because I love my country.
Right.
But I also understand that I don't want to be cut off from the technology that is coming down the pipeline and I can't access it because my country is 30 years behind. And so I'm, doing what I can on the activism side here to create change. But I'm not Tony Robbins and I'm not Joe Rogan, and you don't have that big a platform from which to build on. So it's a slow burn. And so you have to keep your options open and know, what's happening out there in the world and what places are respecting people's rights to try things. Because the closer you get to the cliff, in other words, the closer you are to dying,
Mm-hmm.
the more you have to take risks
That's right.
in order to, and you should have the right to take those risks in order to further science. I mean, that would be a logical, with informed consent. But I would like to see, like I did a video this week on GBT4B and retrosciences and their breakthroughs with the incredible work that they're doing with AI and being able to understand the Yamanaka factors better and reverse cellular aging and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Um, and people are like, like Demis Hassabis, a famous scientist who won the Nobel Prize. It's like, we're going to solve and cure aging by 2035. And I'm going, yeah, you guys are going to do that. I have no doubt whatsoever that you guys are going to do that. Are the regulators, are the lobbyists, are the big pharma, are they going to allow us to get access to it? Or are they going to tie it up in 30 years of clinical trials and like we've seen peptides and so on? Yeah.
Well, I always tell people that when I went to A4M 3 years ago, the keynote speaker was Peter Diamandis.
Hmm.
Know who he is, and
Yeah, I love him. Yeah, he's awesome.
he basically said the same thing. He said, what's happened in the last 10 years is in the longevity health space is more cutting edge and exciting than what happened in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So and AI, of course, plays a huge role in that. And then of course, he and Tony Robbins have the Fountain of Life, and they've
Yeah, Fountain Life. It's awesome.
and
Yep.
the book and so forth. So I think the good news that we can say there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There are more protocols available today than ever before. Again, affordability is one of the issues.
Mm.
Unfortunately, the traditional medical community isn't. It has not supported a lot of these new technologies because they can't patent them, and so they want to keep this basically as to ostracize those who are developing. So it's a battle. It's still being fought.
Yep.
However, people like you always find a way to open a door.
We keep trying.
Whatever door in your face, you're still going to find an aperture to open that door, right?
Yeah, exactly. And on that front, like I've since we last spoke, I've started a biotech company, and we've created a formulation called Rejuvenate Pro, or in the States it's called Cellular Restore.
Oh,
And you know Dr. Elizabeth Hughes, the wonderful, she's our scientific advisor who's helped us with the formulations, and her and I and our team have worked on a formulation for the last 2 years that is mind-blowingly, I'm really proud of the work that we've put in. And we've created this formulation when we decided to go after immunosenescence, so the aging of the immune system. So when Elizabeth and I were talking about, like all this whack-a-mole approach of all the 12 hallmarks of aging, and we've got to have this for that and that for this and this for that, and you end up with like you and I know, 80 supplements to take every day, and to try to affect all of these hallmarks of aging. And then we were studying the work of Dr. David Furman at the 1000 Immunomes Project. So he's the project lead at the Buck Institute and the Stanford University's 1000 Immunomes Project. And this is the world's longest immunology study. And so 15 years and 1,000 people that they've followed over that period of time. And what they've come up with is that the immune system is really at the basis of all aging. Like it's really affects all of the hallmarks of aging, so we say. And so rather than doing the whack-a-mole approach with 1,000 things, we decided to follow that approach and go after immunosenescence, the aging of the immune system, because it's when your immune system goes down that you get autoimmune or cancer or viruses can get a hold of you, or, all of these things that take a lot of older people out. Is really the immune system not doing its job anymore properly. And so we've developed this formulation, and it's a combination of things that have got about 15 years worth of clinical research behind the individual ingredients. And we're trying to do some studies now with the Buck Institute and Stanford. Hopefully we can get that up and running. We're still working on that, using their IH test. And their IH test looks at different proteins to see how well your immune system is aging and whether we're having a win with our formulation in this case. So we want to do clinical trials with this. We've got lots of clinical data about clearing out viruses, about it being antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, upregulates things like the NRF2 pathway. It helps with leaky gut, which is the cause of a lot of problems for many people, helps with the bifidobacterium, lactobacillus. And it's a combination of two of the ingredients are, one is a colostrum whey extract, which is a really powerful extract from colostrum, the first milk of the mammal, right, for the babies. And this is a superfood from the get-go because evolution has made it such that our most vulnerable babies get this for the very first thing that they need in order to develop their immune system, get the immunoglobulins, the transfer factors, the growth factors all across to the baby. Now, as adults, we can also benefit from that, but we've taken out the things that we don't need, the fat, the lactose, that type of thing. And we've kept all the bioactives from Immunel is the ingredient that we've used, which is a standardized, really powerful colostrum whey extract. And there's over 12,000 studies just on colostrum alone, And the problem has always been standardizing it, and that's why this is a very powerful extract. And then we've used from New Zealand cows another product called immune defense proteins, which is a bioactive whey protein suite of 50 bioactive whey proteins. And this was developed by nature over evolution, over time, to protect the cow from infection and inflammation on the inside. of the udder, if you like, because they have a dirty little calf, suckling every day on it and being milked, and so they can get a lot of infections. And so evolution has over time created this bioactive sweet, and it's mostly lactoferrin. So 40% of it is lactoferrin.
Mhm.
Lactoferrin is the most incredible. If you look up lactoferrin and what lactoferrin does, like they have biannual conferences for the last 30 years on the wonders of lactoferrin. It's such a powerful, positive ingredient for us. But this IDP is got a supporting suite of all these 48 other active bioactive whey proteins. And what they found was that they were trying to get a better quality lactoferrin when they first started researching, and they stripped out all the other bioactive whey proteins from it, and they left just the lactoferrin. And the more they stripped it out, the weaker it became. What they found was that the synergy of all of this together was a much more powerful, which makes sense because evolution had created this suite of 50 bioactives together to work together. So if you think of it like the American football team, and you've got the quarterback, that would be lactoferrin, and he's the most important player on the field apparently, but he needs his supporting players around him to shine, right, in order to really be good. And so that's sort of the analogy. So we put these two ingredients together, and then we have kawa, which is not kava, which is from the islands, but kawa, which is a New Zealand indigenous Maori medicine that's been around for hundreds of years here. It's only in New Zealand, and it upregulates the NRF2 pathway, which is your endogenous antioxidant capacity. So very, very powerful for that. And it downregulates the inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-1 beta and interleukin-6, which are the cytokines of aging that go up as we get older anyway, and we get the systemic chronic inflammation. And so it works on all of these inflammatory cytokines, and then it supports a cytokine called interleukin-10, which is a very anti-inflammatory cytokine. So it's a positive one that goes down. So
Right.
IL-1 beta and the IL-6, and these go up, and the other ones down. And so we want to so it modulates the immune system. It's not boosting it, it's modulating it. And then the final ingredient that we got in it is carnosic acid from the rosemary plant. And carnosic acid, we particularly went after this one. It also does a bit of overlapping stuff with the kawa, the NRF2, the interleukins again, but it's also lowers something called CXCL9, which in the 1000 Immunomes project came out as being one of the most important proteins for lowering your cardiovascular risk and modulating your immune system. And it's a very, very, the only one that we've found of a natural supplement source that wasn't a drug that lowers the CXCL9, which they've identified as being one of the major players as far as your immune system's aging is concerned. So that's what the carnosic acid helps with. It's also very neuroprotective. So, if you've got any aging brain related issues, it's very positive for that as well. So, yeah, altogether, this is a very powerful, without giving you an hour of science, because I could, but yeah, this is called Cell Restore in the States, and it's we have our distributors are just getting it in the States this very week, actually.
Can I have you get me some so I can?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what? Here's a really great idea. Let me try it for how long do you think I would need to use it to see some change?
I would like, ideally, I would give it to you for like 90 days. So, I'll send you over enough for 90 days, Michelle, to take a couple a day. And what would be ideal is if you can take your blood tests before and after.
I just did my blood work, so this will be great.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Well, the reason I'm saying this, if I do it for 90 days, and then, I personally have some improvements or success, because everybody needs,
to see.
in this toxic environment we live in.
Yeah.
So then I write an article now for Top Doctor magazine, and I would do an article on you and Elizabeth. And,
wow, that'd be amazing.
And make sure that people know about this, because they have a huge audience. And
that'd be incredible. That'd be
a follow-up on the podcast. but I can help you. I could be a steward for you. If it, if I see it's working, it sounds like it's amazing.
It
And,
is. It is. It is a. And
and
what's your lymphocyte counts and things like your lymphocytes? Because as you get older, your lymphocyte
yeah,
count goes down. Like, and so that affects all of your ratios. The lymphocytes are really. So I've just also developed, Michelle, a immune age calculator,
yeah,
and I'm still working with the developers, so it's not available yet commercially, but hopefully soon if my developers can get it to do what it's meant to do. But this breaks down all your immune. So you put in your CBC, you put in your neutrophils, your lymphocytes, your monocytes, your eosinophils, your RDW, if you
yeah,
can, your hsCRP, and your monocytes
yeah,
and platelets. And then it gives us all of the ratios, like a neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, lymphocyte to monocyte, monocyte, the platelet to
yeah,
lymphocyte, etc. And all of these ratios give us more detailed, nuanced information about what's actually going on in your immune system and where you particularly need to work. And one of the main things that our formulation we know helps with is the lymphocyte count, which is the most critical one that goes down as you age. So really watch out for that one. And if you're doing things like microbiome testing, you might see that your zonulin levels improve and your calprotectin, your inflammatory markers improve and things like that. And your autoimmune markers, your ANA, if you have that type of thing going on, could also see improvement. So
right.
I'm really keen to get this calculator out. I've still got some development work to do on this, but I see this calculator also being a really powerful thing for practitioners
Right.
and for the lay public, because then they're going to be able to put their standard CBC in,
Yeah.
and optionally you can put in your CRP and your RDW, which will give us more accuracy. But if you don't have those, you can just put your CBC in, which everybody gets.
Right.
And it's going to be very, very reasonably priced, and it's going to be a thing that you can track over time to see how your immune system is working. So I'm really excited to get this app out, but it's a little way off yet.
Lisa, sorry to interrupt, but with the calculator, do you have to do any, does you have to extract any blood, or is it all done by,
Yes, so you have to come with your blood results. That's the thing at the moment. So when you go and get your standard blood tests, from your doctor every 6 months or whatever, you just take those numbers and just plug them in, your neutrophils, your lymphocytes, etc.
right?
And then it does the calculations and gives you a report based on that. And then we're working now on developing personalized reports off the back of that. So there's a bit of development work still to be done.
Well, I mean,
But
honestly, you
yeah.
could chat GPT, you could use AI and just do the same thing. Couldn't you just say, okay, here's my results. What does this mean? And,
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's not rocket science, but we've come up with so we've got the pan immune index, and then we've got the systemic immune index. So these are sort of a little bit more. They're all scientifically validated ratios. You could go and do the work for
yeah,
sure on
yeah,
ChatGPT if you wanted to. What we've also come up with is our own scientifically defensible but not proven index number, right? So based on all of those ratios,
hmm,
we've given them a weighting so that you've got a single number that you can put in your head as to how well you're tracking overall. And then you can also break it down. And, if you've got a high LMR, a lymphocyte to monocyte ratio, and you've had a history of cancer, you might want to go and get that checked, or if you've got a high monocyte to lymphocyte ratio, then you may have to go and look at vascular issues, so it gives you that more nuanced information, and it's going to be at a really good price point that I think will make it, just a no-brainer for people to go, right, I'm just going to plug my blood values in. Hopefully we can work it out how you can just scan your blood tests and things. So
hmm.
that's all developer stuff
What,
that I
what,
don't know yet.
what do you think? What will the price point be?
Well, it's going to be under $50.
Oh
So we haven't finalized, but I really want it to make it so that you can follow your trend data over time, and anybody can do this, and practitioners can use this as well,
right,
so that you can actually follow your clients and have a more nuanced look at what's actually going on. Because we all get the CBC, but if you're not running all of these indexes and ratios, then you're not getting that extra information out, that you could be giving you much more clarity on how well you're actually doing in your immune system. And as I said, the immune system is at the basis
Yeah.
of all of the hallmarks of aging. It really affects all of them.
No,
So, yeah.
this is really exciting. So, what kind of response have you had so far with your beta testing?
So I'm very much at the beginning, Michelle. So I'm still working with developers. So I've only been using it in my clinic, like with the demo app at the moment. And it's been very helpful for me to break down to my clients what they need to be doing and to get more nuanced with what are my protocols that I'm developing. But we haven't gone out yet because the development's not finished yet.
Uh,
So I will let you know when we are at that point, and maybe I can come on and talk a little bit more, and we can
Absolutely.
take you through the process and you do yours, and we can track you over a couple of months or
Yeah.
something like that. That would be, really gold.
What is the cost of the product when you do go out to distribution?
Oh, so for the Cell Restore, our actual formulation, that's hitting the stores in America in the next couple of weeks. Longevity Launch is our distributor, and I'm not exactly in New Zealand. It's the price point of $89 New Zealand, which is about half of so that would be half in the US market. So what's that?
About 40,
Um,
about 40.
about 45 US dollars for
Okay.
a month's supply.
Okay.
Yeah, so give or take a few dollars. I'm not quite sure what the final price is in America because we've got tariffs and all of that sort of jazz going on at the moment. So, forgive me if I, got that slightly wrong. But I'll be able to tell your listeners that shortly once they've received the first shipment, which is en route as we speak.
Well,
So
you
that's pretty exciting.
me the 3 months. Why don't you give me a link that
Hmm.
I can have my assistant put in the show notes so people know it's coming and
Yep.
be looking out for it. And, then we'll do a follow up. That's what I like. I want to get my own personal experience.
Yeah. So
That,
I will send you some personal stuff over immediately, and then I'll hook you up with our distributors, Courtney from Longevity Launch, and make sure that you have the right links once they've got their systems set up and ready to go. And for anybody international that's listening, they can buy it directly off my website. So in New Zealand, it's called Rejuvenate Pro. We wanted to have that in the States, but we had trademark issues, so we had to, change the name. But
right.
yeah, so I will send you some links to the New Zealand
Yeah.
one in case
Yeah.
for
Because
international.
Roxanne
Yeah,
in the show notes and with at least for ordering, if people are not in the US, they can
yeah,
order through your website. If they're in
yeah.
the US, they can order through Longevity Pro
Longevity Launch. Yep,
lo- lo-
yeah,
launch. I mean, okay,
yep.
that is fabulous. So I'm so excited about all the stuff that you've done. And before we go, I want to ask you one question. If you had to pick in all those 11 years of people that you've interviewed, is there one or two guests that just stand out that you would like want everybody to know about to go research?
Yeah, I mean, number one would be Dr. Elizabeth Youth.
Yes.
She is the GOAT. She is the greatest of all times, in my opinion.
You know, you
And
know
yeah,
she's been on my podcast, right?
yes, I do. I think I introduced you, didn't I?
Thank you. Thanks to
She
you.
is the bomb. She
Yeah.
is absolutely the most wonderful person, the most passionate
Yeah.
doctor. She's my mum's physician. She's our scientific advisor. She's my mentor. She's
Yeah.
absolute legend. So she would be my absolute number one. And then oh my God, there's so many bloody brilliant people
I know.
that I've interviewed. Um, One I really love, a real rebel, is Dr. Bill Clearfield from Nevada, and then Dr. Thomas Levy. He is an
I've heard.
absolute legend. Yeah, those are a few of my favorites. Dr. Dom D'Agostino, he was very cool as well, super knowledgeable. Oh, there's just so many. I hate
You,
picking favorite children.
yeah, when you see the product, just throw. I mean, the links. Send me those names because you and I have been really good about. Like you
Sharing.
met Rob Silverman through me,
Oh yeah, Rob, he's awesome.
and I
Yeah.
met Elizabeth through you, and then I also met Kashif at
Oh
DM.
yes.
And I
Yeah.
actually this month, Tracy Wood, you know Tracy Wood?
No, I don't think I know Tracy.
Okay, she's the new CEO of DNA Company.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
haven't caught up with them for
check
a
out
while.
Doctor
Yep.
Magazine. She's
Yep.
the subject for this month's article.
Mm-hmm.
This month being August, I'm sorry, we're in September. So September is Dr. Nathan Bryan, who's also,
Oh, yes, I love him as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
and nitric oxide, which of course is
Mm.
so important for everybody to know.
Yep. I take that every day.
Me too. One lozenge and my scores have gone like off the charts, and it's amazing
Yep.
how that thing, how one lozenge can do such.
Yep. I have two lozenges. Mum has two a day. I have one a day.
Yeah,
And it means that her blood pressure's normalized, like, which is a miracle.
absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
we came to the end. I knew it would go by so fast, and they just signaled me. So I wanted to say goodbye to you, but I wanted to be sure that we have covered everything for the viewers and listeners today. So basically, what you're going to do is send links so that we can have people who want to order.
Yep.
You go,
International links. And then I will also introduce you actually on email to Courtney so she can get the right links from
yeah,
their department. And I'm also, yeah, and if anyone wants to listen to Pushing the Limits as my podcast or on
yeah.
my YouTube, just
That
look
was
up Lisa Tamati.
yeah.
It's pretty
That was
easy to
an.
find.
Say that again so everybody gets it. But we'll put it
So,
in the show notes. But
yeah, Pushing the Limits is my podcast. So it's on all good podcast platforms. LisaTamati.com is my website.
right,
And at Lisa Tamati on YouTube, you'll find my YouTube channel where I do lots of exclusive content as well as the podcast interviews. And yeah, it's love people to reach out. I also work with people, consulting and so on and so forth. So
right.
thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate you. You're just
Yes.
such a warrior for this industry and such an amazing person, doing the work on the daily, getting all this out there.
Much chemistry between us is that we're so aligned in our vision of helping people. That number one, our tenacity in fighting any obstacles that come in front of us, that we'll never give up. And
No.
we have that definitely in common. And
Yeah.
just our passion for wellness and wanting to embrace the possibilities. That's where I think the stewardship comes, the visionary. That's where you can really be the best version of yourself if you take responsibility and don't wait for someone else to do it for you, because that's never going to work. You've got to be the one to lead. You have to be the CEO of your health, as they say.
Amen. Amen.
Uh,
CEO of your own health. That's my motto too. Like, don't outsource your health or wealth to anybody. No one person. Be self-sovereign in everything you do.
I will
People
send
to
you
do.
by WhatsApp when we get off. I'll send you my mailing address. I'm so excited to
Yep.
to be a part of your study here, and I'll be a really good feedback for you.
Yeah, that would be absolutely epic because
Uh,
yeah, that's what we need. We need to do more clinical research and also just people
well,
like yourself.
yeah, individuals too who are very open-minded, who want to see change and want
Mm,
to make improvements, because they're always looking for those next uh, flagships that are going to be the changes, and they don't have to cost a bloody fortune like
yeah,
so many
exactly.
do. All right,
Yeah.
Lisa, well, you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch. And thank you so much for taking the time and sharing so much about who you are and what makes you so unique and so special. So I really love you.
Yeah, I think you're a rock star too, Michelle. So you just keep being you. You're epic.
Thank you so
Mutual admiration society here.
We do have that, but that's what it's all about in life, right? All right, Lisa, thank you so much, and good luck to you.